Many Americans, of course, feeling pain at the pump. The average US price for regular gas is now $3.30, up more than 40% from a year ago, according to AAA. The American Petroleum Institute says rising prices are in part due to policies aimed at restricting production of US oil and natural gas. In its 2022 outlook, the API also cites the challenges Europe faces with reliance on nations like Russia for fuel and why US energy independence must be protected. Joining us now is Mike Sommers, President and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute. Mike, always great to have you on the show. Happy New Year. Much of what we're talking about on a daily basis cuts to the core of what you're talking about in your 2022 outlook, and that is that the American public actually are more frightened of rising prices and inflation than they are of COVID at this moment, and fuel prices are a huge part of that.
Absolutely, Julia, and great to be with you again. I do think we have major concerns about some of the policy issues that are being pursued by this administration, which, while at the same time they're asking for more oil production, all of their policies are actually pointing to dampening production in the United States. In fact, just this week, they came out with a new policy to restrict production in Alaska at the National Petroleum Reserve. So from the beginning of this administration, really to just this week, all of their policy signals are for the United States producers to stop producing oil and natural gas here at home.
I mean, you can understand what they're trying to do because they're trying to shift the investment and their money into renewables. The challenge, and we've talked about this in the past, is a timing mismatch. If you underinvest in one that you require in the short to medium term, then it doesn't matter how much you're investing in the future, you're going to have a crunch in the short to medium term in terms of prices.
Well, that's exactly right. And so often, Julia, what we've actually found is that when you're making an energy transition, and we've been going through energy transitions throughout world history, when you're making an energy transition, it is much less about transition and more about addition. We're going to be using more oil and gas as populations grow and energy needs grow than we do today. And we need to continue to make those investments. And unfortunately, there is historic underinvestment going on in the oil and gas sector right now, which could lead to future price shocks. And that is a real concern that investors should have and that consumers should have as we look at pump prices and natural gas prices, which are at historic levels in Europe in particular.
Yeah, I mean, and this is an important point, and I think that the difference in, as I discussed in the introduction, energy independence in the United States versus some of the challenges that Europe faces with where they get their energy is an important point. But I want to get back to what you said because I'd like to quantify it if we can, and I'm sure you guys have done the work. The dust has settled now on COP26. Even if we assume that all the commitments that have been made there are fulfilled, do you have a sense of how much oil and gas that we're going to need in the coming years anyway, even if all the commitments are fulfilled?
Yeah, in fact, the International Energy Agency has done that themselves. And if we meet every commitment, if every country meets every commitment of the Paris Climate Accords, almost 50% of the world's energy is still going to come from natural gas and oil in 2040. And that means we need more investment in this sector. We need to make sure that consumers are protected from price spikes like we're seeing right now. And that means investments not just in the United States, but throughout the world. And unfortunately, that investment continues to go down. We want to make sure that it continues to go up so that consumers are protected, while at the same time, we need to be reducing emissions. And that's a top priority for us as well. In fact, the American Petroleum Institute came out with a policy just last year on how you can continue to invest in American oil and gas while at the same time reduce emissions. And we have a good record. In fact, in the power sector, just in the last 15 years, we've been able to reduce emissions by 40%. And most of that is because of a fuel switch that has gone on from coal to natural gas. We want to be able to continue to export that environmental progress throughout the world.
Yeah, I mean, we should be doing this on a global basis. I think that's part of the point. If we're all trying to go at it in different directions, we're sort of fighting against each other. There will be those, and you get plenty of criticism saying, look, you're talking your book, you're resistant because you represent an industry that's dirty and it's not doing enough to transition and it gets loads of subsidies. You've had all the criticisms in the past. I would argue, why can't we do both? Why couldn't you as the API say, fine, we are going to transition to a zero carbon world. We just have to go there in a smart manner, and that's simply going to take some time, and we have to get the investment right. Is that not part of what you're saying? I'm just not sure you're heard.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at what actually is going on in Europe right now, where they have these historically high gas prices, They're somewhat insulated by them even being higher as a consequence of U.S. liquefied natural gas going to Europe right now. The same is true in Asia also. The world is really supported and insulated in some ways because of U.S. LNG production, which has really had explosive growth in the last decade. We need to make sure that there are multiple suppliers for the world's energy needs. Increasingly, that supplier of choice is the United States. But we have to continue to invest in those suppliers and invest in this industry so that they can supply lower carbon energy in the form of liquefied natural gas to the rest of the world. We're actually seeing right now that Putin is turning off the gas to Europe right now. And we need to make sure that we have multiple suppliers to all countries so that they have access to lower carbon natural gas, which is really leading the world in in making sure the world can meet its environmental commitments.
And your point about that was the International Energy Agency chief saying that actually Russia's restricting them for political reasons ahead of course, the talks with NATO over Ukraine. Very quickly, we have about a minute. Mike, can your industry and sector clean up quicker? Can it get cleaner quicker?
Well, you think about what we've done already. In fact,
I'm asking if you can get quicker. I know what you've done. I'm asking if you can accelerate this. Throw me a bone.
We're working on that every single day. In fact, this is the industry that's pioneered carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. We want to continue to make investments in carbon capture. We're seeking to partner with the federal government and the Biden administration and other world governments to make sure that we can continue to cut methane emissions in particular, but carbon capture has to be part of the solution as well. We were encouraged by what we saw from the bipartisan infrastructure bill in new investments in carbon capture, and we want to continue that progress as well. What we asked for in the annual API State of American Energy was to continue to be able to partner with this administration and with Congress to make those investments. We don't want to have an adversarial relationship with the Biden administration. We want to work with them on meeting the climate goals while at the same time addressing the energy needs, not just of the United States, but of the world.
Yeah, we have to work together. Mike, always interesting to chat. Come back soon, please, because I want to talk to you about cybersecurity risks for you guys as well, but I've run out of time. I'm being told to be quiet, so I have to say thank you and let you go and come back soon. Mike Sommers, thank you, President and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute there. Okay, still ahead.